All right, so we're diving into a familiar struggle today.
Oh, yeah.
That feeling of being stuck, the writer's block,
Hmm.
when it comes to finishing a novel.
Yeah.
Our listener sent over some great stuff,
Okay.
especially these excerpts from Finish Your Novel by Mark Teppo.
I love that book.
So we're going to use his advice to create a personalized plan, a way for our listener to finally get that book done.
Yeah, it is so common to feel stuck. I think what's great is that the listener has already taken that first step, you know,
Right.
reaching out and looking for guidance. And Teppo offers a really practical roadmap in his book.
Yeah. So the first thing Teppo really stresses is giving yourself permission.
Permission.
Permission to create, to imagine, to dedicate time, to not be perfect, and to ignore those inner and outer critics.
That's huge. I think so many aspiring authors get really bogged down by fear. The fear of failure, judgment, not being good enough. So, to give ourselves permission to just be messy and experiment, to write without that pressure of perfection can be so freeing. Really unleashes the creativity and allows ideas to just flow.
He tells this great anecdote, this story about a friend who basically used peer pressure to finish his book.
Oh, wow.
So his friends were like, if you don't finish this book, there will be consequences.
Oh, no.
Sounds a little intense, but hey, it worked for him.
Well, it's true. I mean, external accountability is surprisingly effective.
Yeah.
Having that kind of structure and commitment can provide that push we need
Right.
to get out of our comfort zones. Deadlines, even self-imposed ones, can be amazingly powerful.
So then Teppo brings up this idea of glorious writing time, or GWT as he calls it.
GWT.
It's about carving out dedicated time just for writing. And it doesn't have to be, hours and hours.
Okay.
Even short, consistent periods can be really effective.
Right.
The key is making that time sacred.
I love that. And what I think is so great about GWT is that it's flexible. It can fit into anybody's life.
Yeah,
You create a system that works for your schedule and your personality.
absolutely.
It's not about finding hours of uninterrupted time. It's about being intentional with the time you do have. 20 minutes before work, an hour before bed, whatever it is.
He actually uses a poker chip system with his kids.
With his kids, poker chips.
Different colored chips represent, different amounts of focused work time.
Okay.
And they can cash them in, so to speak, for rewards.
Oh, that's smart.
Almost like gamifying productivity.
Yeah. I mean, gamification can make writing feel, less like a chore, more like a game.
Uh-huh.
And especially if you're somebody who responds well to that kind of structure and rewards.
Right.
It could be anything, that new book you've been wanting or, an hour to do your favorite hobby.
So then Teppo goes into how our physical environment actually affects our writing, which sounds kind of strange at first, but, our surroundings really do play a part in how we think and create.
Think about it. I mean, are there places where you feel more focused, more creative? Maybe it's, a sunny corner in your house, a quiet library, even a park bench surrounded by nature.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody has a place.
He tells this funny story about an author who could only write on trains,
On trains.
surrounded by noise and chaos. But somehow, that was his sweet spot.
Wow, so we need to just experiment, right, and find what works.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Totally.
The key is to be aware of your surroundings,
Right.
how they impact that creative process.
So next, Teppo tackles structure. And he uses this tree analogy.
A tree.
The trunk represents the main narrative, the central story.
Okay.
And the branches symbolize unity, separation, and balance within the plot.
Interesting.
It's a way to visualize how your story flows.
Visualizing your plot can be so helpful, especially when you're trying to understand how all those different pieces fit together.
Right.
I think the tree analogy can really help see how they intertwine, how conflicts arise, and how the story progresses towards its resolution.
He even uses Star Wars as an example.
Really?
Explains how the Death Star plans are the unifying element.
Okay.
And then Obi-Wan Kenobi's death is the separating event.
Right.
It's amazing how, this simple model can be applied to such a complex story.
I bet this model can be applied to our listener's story, too.
For sure.
Think about your central conflict, those big moments that move your story forward, and even those seemingly small events that kind of shift the balance of the narrative.
Right.
The tree provides this framework to make sure every element, every little piece, contributes to a cohesive and engaging plot.
Now let's talk characters.
Okay.
The heart of any great story.
Absolutely.
And Teppo stresses letting them drive the narrative. So it's not about forcing them into a predetermined plot.
Oh, I see.
It's about letting their choices and actions actually shape what happens.
Like they have a mind of their own.
Yeah, almost. This ties into a style called pantsing, where
Pantsing.
the author kind of lets the characters lead the way,
Oh, wow.
which can be scary,
Hmm.
but it can also lead to a story that feels way more organic and authentic.
It's almost like a collaboration, isn't it?
Yeah.
Between you, the writer, and the characters that you've brought to life.
Teppo has this idea called maximum capacity,
Maximum capacity.
where he basically says, even flawed characters should be operating at their best to keep readers interested.
Interesting. So not about making them perfect, but making sure their actions, make sense within their limitations.
Yeah, exactly.
I think this is a really subtle point that a lot of new writers miss.
Uh-huh.
We want characters who are relatable and flawed,
Right.
but those flaws shouldn't come from laziness or lack of effort. We want to see them trying,
Yeah.
pushing their boundaries, even if they mess up.
Yeah.
That's what makes their victories even more satisfying.
All right, so finally we come to the craft of writing scenes.
Okay.
Teppo uses these 3 questions from David Mamet.
Oh,
Who wants what happens if they don't get it, and why now?
interesting.
And these questions ensure that each scene has a purpose and conflict.
Those are really good questions to ask because I think they really force us to think about the characters' motivations
Yeah.
and the stakes within each scene.
Uh-huh.
It's not just dialogue and action, it's about those desires and fears that drive them.
Right.
If we understand that, I think the scene will naturally resonate with the reader.
So Teppo calls this chewing the scenery.
Chewing the
You really push those emotional stakes to their limit, even if you tone it down later.
Okay.
It's about capturing those raw emotions that fuel the story.
So the initial draft is about capturing that essence, the raw energy that drives the story.
Right.
You can always refine and polish it later,
Exactly.
but those initial sparks of intensity are crucial.
All right, we covered a lot of ground here in this first section.
We did.
Um,
Ready to dive in a little deeper.
Let's do it.
Okay, so we've talked about laying the foundation. Now let's look at a part of writing that can be tough.
Editing.
Yeah, editing. Teppo's pretty blunt about being ruthless.
It's hard though, right? Like
Yeah.
you pour so much into the words and then you're supposed to just cut them.
Exactly. But the thing is, editing isn't about failure. It's about refinement.
Hmm.
Think of it like sculpting. You start with a rough block and you chip away at it until the masterpiece emerges.
I like that.
He even talks about cutting 10,000 words from one of his books, a whole chunk gone just because it dragged.
Right.
Shows you even seasoned authors do it.
So being open to editing, refining, even letting go is important.
Yeah.
Less is more sometimes.
Absolutely. And Teppo also talks about the emotional side of writing,
Mhm.
those late night anxiety spirals, the self-doubt.
Oh, tell me about it.
It's all part of the process.
It does make you feel less alone though, knowing even big-time authors go through that.
Exactly. It's normal. Just acknowledge it, be kind to yourself, and keep going.
He brings up this thing called the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule.
Oh, yeah.
Like 80% of the work is just finishing that first draft. The other 20 is polishing.
Makes you think about how we use our energy, right? Getting it down versus making it perfect.
Totally different mindsets.
And don't forget to celebrate each step. Finishing a draft, even a messy one, is huge.
For sure. Now, when those doubts creep in, Teppo's pretty clear. Tune out the critics.
Especially the ones who are just negative for no reason.
Right.
Gotta learn to tell the difference, right? Between real feedback and just noise.
Absolutely.
That's your vision.
He even has this funny tip. Write back to those critics, get it all out, but don't actually send it.
Oh, I love that. Healthy venting.
So throughout the book, Teppo keeps saying how important agility is.
Agility.
There's no one right way to write a novel. It's about what works for you.
He's all about experimenting, finding your style.
Some people love outlines, others just go with the flow. Some need silence, others need a coffee shop buzz.
It's like, what makes your brain spark?
He even talks about writing in this loud coffee shop, music blasting,
Yeah.
because it helped him focus.
Wow.
Shows you how different everyone is.
Yeah. So finding your process is an ongoing thing then.
Yeah, being open to new things.
Now let's circle back to that tree analogy. The trunk is the story. Branches are unity, separation, balance.
Right, helps you see the big picture.
He suggests mapping your own book onto that.
Oh, interesting.
Like, where's the unity moment? Where's the big separation event?
That's cool. So it's not just about structure, it's about making the story have a rhythm.
Keeps people hooked. Now let's think about the characters. Kind of make them drive the story.
Right. Not just be there, but actually make things happen.
Teppo's big on that. Let them lead you, even surprise you.
It's like they take on a life of their own.
And that keeps things fresh for the reader, too.
Okay, then there's the scene writing. Remember those mammoth questions?
Who wants what? All of that.
They force you to think about each scene's purpose.
Like each scene's got to be a building block.
Right, contributing to the whole. But before all that, there's that initial spark. Where does that come from?
Ah, the magic part. Could be anything, a conversation, a dream.
So how do you take that spark and make it real?
That's where discipline comes in, showing up even when you don't feel it.
It's about making it a habit.
Creating the right conditions for your creativity.
Not just waiting, but making it happen.
And then, of course, there's getting the book out there. Teppo talks about dealing with critics and all that.
That's a whole other challenge.
It is,
Yeah.
but he's got some good advice on how to handle it.
So it's not just writing the book, it's knowing the whole game.
And remembering the journey doesn't stop when you type the end.
All right, we've covered a lot here. Ready to boil it down to those key takeaways.
Let's do it. Give the listener that 10-point plan to get this book done. Okay, so 10 points to help our listener finish that novel, like a toolkit for the whole process.
Perfect. So number one, it all starts with permission. Give yourself permission to create, even if it's messy at first.
Totally. Embrace those imperfections. Experiment, explore. No pressure to be perfect right away. That's how creativity flows.
Number two, glorious writing time. Make it a habit, even if it's just short bursts.
Consistency is key, right? Find a system that fits your life and stick to those writing sessions. Doesn't have to be hours at a time.
Number three, think about your space. Find that spot where you can really focus and feel comfortable writing.
Oh, that's important. Your environment makes a difference. Maybe it's a quiet corner, maybe it's a busy coffee shop, whatever gets those creative juices flowing.
And to help you see the big picture, number four, use that tree analogy to visualize your plot. Trunk is the main story. Branches are the unity, the separation, the balance.
Such a helpful visual. It's like a roadmap for your story, right? Make sure all the elements work together and lead to a satisfying ending.
Number five, let your characters take the wheel. Let them drive the story.
Trust them. Sometimes they know better than we do where the story needs to go. Could lead you in some amazing directions you never expected.
For those powerful scenes, number six, make sure there's clear motivation and high stakes. Every scene should have a purpose.
Right, like Mehmet's questions. Who wants what? What happens if they don't get it? It all adds up to a story that keeps people hooked.
But writing can be tough. So number seven, don't give up when those doubts and anxieties hit. It's all part of the process.
Be kind to yourself. Everyone goes through it. Celebrate the milestones and just keep pushing forward.
When you start getting feedback, remember number eight, learn to filter it. Not all criticism is created equal.
There's a difference between constructive advice and just negativity. Protect your vision and focus on the feedback that helps you grow.
Number nine, there's no one right way to write. Embrace your own process.
Find what works for you. Outlines, pantsing, silence, noise, it's all good. Just be true to your creative self.
And finally, number 10, it all comes back to making time for writing. Embrace that glorious writing time, even if it's just a few minutes here and there.
Make it a habit, be consistent, and watch those words add up. A finished book starts with putting in the time.
So there you have it, our 10-point plan to help you conquer that novel. From finding your creative space to dealing with critics, we've covered it all.
Remember, a good book is a finished book. So keep writing, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep believing in your story.
What's one small step you can take today to move your novel forward? Let us know. And until next time on The Deep Dive, happy writing.